Okay, we're live. Yes, 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 we're live. Hello. Hello. We are live. Welcome to When Your Love Sets You on Fire, mess of a show by the Winding Sheet Outfit. I'm Amber. Hi, it is really weird not being able to see anybody right now. And I have the COVID brain. Do y'all have the COVID brain? Yes, of course you do. Yes, great. We're going to be doing something a little different today because we're doing a live streaming show, and that means technology, which means that anything could happen. So also, if you're familiar with our work, we do not have the regular cast and crew that we generally work with because we're trying to keep everyone safe. So it's just me and Derek because we're a couple and we live together and we share all our own germs. And so we're doing it in our garage, which is also our studio where we make all our shows, which used to be a garage, but it's now a studio because Derek can't stop building things. Also, it could never be a really good garage because the way that the driveway sits, you can't really get a car in here very well. Anyway, that's all to say that because it's in our garage, we can't control some of the ambient sounds that you might hear during this. So you might hear cars going through the alleyway or someone throwing away their trash or dogs barking, or we have neighbors that hold parties that we're trying not to be too judgy about, but you know, that's their business. I am stalling a little bit because Derek is not here yet, but he's going to be. He'll be here. It's just COVID brain, all different times, all that stuff. So while we're waiting, why don't I go ahead and tell you that, so the puppet show that we have for you tonight, it does deal with themes of domestic abuse, and that is a really serious topic. It's a topic that has touched my life in the past, and I've seen it come out of nowhere and destroy other people's lives, much like it did with Bridget Cleary, who we're going to talk about today. If you are interested, you can go to our page on the Twin Cities Horror Fest website or to our website at www.thewindingsheetoutfit.com. And there are some links to resources to organizations that help with victims of domestic abuse and organizations that are trying to stop the continuation of this. Anyway, that's going to always be evergreen on the page for this show on our website. So, you know what? So I think let's start without Derek. I'm going to switch you over to the good camera. Good camera. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, good, good. I'm going to switch this over here real quick. Okay. All right. The story of Bridget Cleary is the tragic tale of the last witch burning in Ireland. And this is a really irritating misnomer because it has nothing to do with witches and everything to do with fairies. It's probably the British newspapers that kind of said, well, it's kind of supernatural, so we'll just lump it after witchcraft and call it a day. This is really significant though, because it kind of spawned this Irish children's rhyme that goes, "Are you a witch or are you a fairy? Or are you the wife of Michael Cleary?" It rhymes better in an Irish dialect. Anyway, this is significant because we have three entities here. We have the witch, the fairy, and a normal human woman whose name was Bridget, not just the wife of someone named Michael Cleary. But these represent the newspaper's assumptions, the presumed victim, and an actual victim. And I think maybe the British tabloids, maybe they thought that by calling this a witch burning rather than a fairy burning, maybe it was more sinister and would sell more papers, which if you know anything about witches and fairies is completely ignorant, because you probably think about fairies like, you know, like Tinkerbell Or Una, anyone got Una? Like, if you haven't seen Legend, like it's the only Tom Cruise movie I own. The Tim Curry and the things and the fairy's heart burns fast and free. Like, anyway, focus. So these are diminutive creatures with wings that get really pouty when they don't get what they want. And this is an accurate depiction of fairies, but it's not the only one, because fairies can be little, they can also be big. They can have wings, they cannot have wings. They can shape shift like nobody's business, and they can imitate anybody, including you. So fairies are, you know, magic beings that kind of go in and out of our, you know, visual plane. So they're really greedy, and they have the power to get whatever they want from whoever catches their attention. This causes a lot of havoc for humans. So it's best not to try to get their attention. Even talking about fairies can be a misfortune. But when you do get their attention, sometimes they will kidnap a human and bring them into their world and make them do awful things, like take care of their awful children, or dance for 100 years without sleeping, or sometimes they'll come into our world and they will make us do terrible things. Yeah, mostly if something happened that was bad in our world, like someone died, or they got sick, or they got kidnapped, a lot of people would blame the fairies, because that is less blasphemous than blaming God. And, you know, it's just easy to, you know, easier than realizing that life can be just really shitty sometimes. Oh,
sorry.
Oh, okay. Hi.
I helped with the job site.
Yep.
And I still had to go inside and shower and put on my costume and everything.
But you know, we have a show tonight.
Yeah, I know, but the guys driving the lumber truck don't give a fuck about my schedule, you know. Anyway, what time are we going on?
Right now. Say hello.
Oh shit. Hi.
Yep.
Did you start?
Yep. We talked about fairies.
Okay. Well, okay, that's good. That's good. That's the most extraneous part of the show anyway.
Well, no, because witch or fairy, Michael Clary, the fairies are a big part of this.
Listen, folks, the only important thing you need to know about fairies is that people were dumb enough to believe in fairies.
Okay. At least don't speak ill of the fairies.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got some puppet stuff for you. Let's turn this around. I don't know where your marker is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's where I would put it if I were me.
Okay, you got everything you need?
Yep.
You sure?
Yep.
Okay, great. So let's begin. Bridget Cleary was born Bridget Boland in Ballybadley, County Tipperary, Ireland. Now, you've probably heard of Tipperary. It is what most people think of when they think of Ireland. It's in the middle and the south of the country, and it's full of cold stone walls and sturdy castles that have been tumbling down for centuries. These castles that were built in the times of the Norman invasion and witchcraft and Black Death. In 1895, when the bulk of our story takes place, Tipperary is full of green fields and sparse woods. It is lush with music and fairy lore. It is so quintessentially Irish that the Irish newspapers of the time printed, "Where Tipperary goes, Ireland follows." So Ballybadley, where the village where this takes place, is in County Tipperary. It's in the middle of a triangle, with Cashel to the west with its fairy hill, and to the northeast is Kilkenny Castle with its turreted towers, and to the south, past the Slaveneman Bog, is Clonmel, a city on the river shore, whose name means honey meadow. It is here that Bridget took a job as a dressmaker's assistant, and where she met a man named Michael Cleary. Now, we don't know much about how they met, but we know that Michael must have been very taken with her, because he is on record as saying,
"She is nice in manners and appearance. She is too fine to be my wife."
that's Irish?
We're doing the dialect.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, okay, that's fine.
Oh,
It's fine.
Okay, okay, you know, if you wanted me to do it perfectly, you should have hired like a dialect
I
coach
know,
or
okay,
something.
it's okay, it's fine. I'm just not gonna bring anybody in during a pandemic to do
Fine.
that, so.
Fine.
Okay, so he's on record as saying, she was nice in manners and appearance. She's too fine to be my wife.
So you get to do the dialect?
I do it better. And Bridget must have been taken with him as well, because for a woman who is described as independent and beautiful, who made her own wages, she decided to marry a man almost 10 years her senior and a Cooper to boot.
Hey, can I ask, what do you got against Coopers?
Nothing, it's.
You know, actually, it was a skilled trade, has very well paid job. You know, lots of people needed barrels and tubs
Sure.
and things at this time. It was a good job.
Yeah, I know if you like working with wood, it's fine.
I do. That's why I'm a carpenter.
Okay.
And
Yep.
you know, my job didn't go away when the economy went to shit. I mean, because people always need shit built, you know? I bet Michael was one of the few fully employable men in Ireland at the time.
Mhm.
I mean, folks, you got to understand what the economy of Ireland was like in 1895.
Yep, you're gonna tell us about that, aren't you?
I am.
Okay.
So, in a lot of ways, Ireland was actually England's first colony. I mean, going all the way back to the 12th century with the Norman invasion, the kings of England made a habit of confiscating huge pieces of Irish land and concentrating it in the hands of a few English lords who didn't even bother to move to the country. So, by 1845, in the year of the potato famine, almost all of the good agricultural land in Ireland had been owned by these absentee landlords. The Irish were really just tenants renting their own country. Oh, the potato famine, right? Most people think this is pretty simple. You know, the Irish were over reliant on potatoes, so when the potatoes died, the people died. But what most people don't understand is that Ireland was still growing a lot of other food. It's just that those landlords, who also happened to be members of parliament, had already made a bunch of laws and business arrangements to make sure that all of the Irish wheat, all of the Irish dairy, all of the Irish beef was being sold in England. That's right. While 1 million Irish people starved to death, Ireland was still exporting food to feed England. And it's not like this was a secret. Everybody stayed around and watched it, and nobody did anything to stop it. In fact, those members of parliament argued that it would be immoral to stop it, you know, because these lazy Irish, they really need to learn how to be self-sufficient like us in England, you know. And, you know, if we just feed them now, then they're just going to be on the dole for the rest of their lives. You know what they need? They need some bootstraps. They need some stiff upper lips. They need the government to get out of the way and let the invisible hand of the market do its magic.
Well, it is really great that people don't say things like that anymore.
I know, right?
So good job making this relevant for now. How does this relate to Bridget's story?
Well, I'm getting to that. You see, during the 2 or 3 years of the potato famine, almost a quarter of Ireland's population left Ireland forever. I mean, the economy was just devastated. And 50 years later, in 1895, Bridget's time, that death spiral was still going on. I mean, it had become almost a rite of passage for the Irish to leave their country. I mean, look at this. Here, population chart, 1845, just before the potato famine, Ireland had a population of just over 8 million. 50 years later, 1895, it had a population of just over 4 million. That's the population cut in half in 2 generations. I mean, think about that. Communities were hollowed out, families were destroyed, the Irish language almost disappeared entirely. And as the social fabric unraveled, it became necessary for women like Bridget Cleary to start forming their own businesses, heading their own households, managing their own money. I mean, the old conservative Irish Catholics looked around and all of a sudden they no longer recognized their wives. Relevant.
Okay. No, that's good. That's good. Okay, I think we've got more here. So why don't I turn you around here again and get my little friend. Here it is. All right. Back in Ballivadley, Bridget earned her keep. Resourceful, independent, hardworking and sweet. She bought up a contraption to dress, make, and to sew, and kept a flock of hens for eggs to sell when times were slow. We don't really know why she came back to Ballyvadley, presumably to take care of her ailing parents. Michael stayed in Clonmel, where there was more work for coopers to be had. The village all around her offered their support. Her neighbors all were cousins or relatives of sort. She trusted Father Ryan, who came to say the Mass, and all who saw her passing said, "There goes a pretty lass." Father Ryan was a pious man, very proud of his work, very proud of being able to help the people in his community. When Bridget's mother died, she became the sole aide to her own father, and it was Father Ryan who helped them find better accommodations. Now, Bridget's father had been a laborer in his youth, which means that he was eligible for a laborer's cottage paid for by the government, and Father Ryan helped them to find a really nice one. Bridget and her father moved in, and they were fine with that. Then Michael came down from Clonmel. He was not as easy with it. The cottage was quite charming, all nestled in its glade, but nobody had wanted it, the best one to be made. It sat upon a ring fort, an old forgotten lair, and those who knew the fairy lore would rather not live there. So it sat on or near a ring fort.
Ring forts.
Okay, I think that I got the ring fort.
No, it's okay.
I got it.
Okay, you did the song. I can do the ring forts. It's cool. Hey, has this ever happened to you? You want to build a fortress, right? But who has the time for that? Well, my friends, what you need to get is a ring fort. See, it's actually a pretty simple proposition. All you need to do is find the tallest elevation in your field, dig a circular trench around that elevation, pile that dirt up in a mound inside the trench, build a wall on top of that mound, and bam, you got yourself a fort. Ring forts. Now, the old Celts in Ireland actually started building these ring forts all the way back here in the Bronze Age. And they loved doing it so much that today in Ireland, there are over 40,000 known ring fort sites, just here and here and here, and probably a bunch up in here too. I mean, these were some ring fort building motherfuckers, let me tell you. Now, when the Vikings ruled Ireland, oh, did I mention that the Vikings ruled Ireland? Did you know that the Vikings ruled Ireland? Because they did for like 200 years. And they didn't just show up for some smash and grab, to get some cattle and gold and cart it back to Norway. No, they conquered the place. I mean, Dublin was founded by Vikings. Actually, in the Old Norse language, dub meaning dark or black, and lin meaning pool.
Do the ring forts. If you're gonna do ring forts, do ring forts.
Ring fort. Oh yeah, ring forts. Okay. So when the Scandinavians started moving inland away from Dublin, which means Blackpool, they took over the good ring fort sites, rebuilt the walls, and used them as bases to go out raiding. And not just for stuff, mind you, but for people to sell as slaves, especially women, who they might refer to sometimes as wives. See, it's been said that Ireland's greatest export is her people, and that was the trade that the Vikings were there to muscle in on. I mean, think about that. For 200 years of Irish history, if a young woman was taken inside the circle of a ring fort, she might never be seen again. And if she did come back, well, she would never be herself again. Now, the next people to come invading were the Normans here in the 12th century. Now, the Normans themselves were actually descendants from Vikings, but by this time they spoke French, so they were better dressed, but snootier. And actually, they were very snooty about those ring fort sites, too. They liked building big stone castles to show off how refined and wealthy that they were. So the ring fort sites fell into decay, usually becoming nothing more than a mysterious circular mound in somebody's field or backyard. But the Irish had started to forget that they themselves had actually built them in the first place, starting to ascribe them to things like fairies or magic. But one thing was not forgotten. See, if a person, especially a woman, stepped inside the circle of a ring fort, well, they might be taken.
And the Cleary cottage sat on or near one of these ring forts, which Bridget and her father didn't really mind. But when Bridget got sick, and she got really sick, we don't know if it was pneumonia or tuberculosis or bronchitis, but she was sick for a while, and the neighbors kind of thought that maybe fairy involvement was going on. And then they got Michael started thinking about it. And I don't, and he got, I don't know, like, I don't even know why he came back to Valley Vadley, because I don't know what is here in this tiny village for him.
I don't know, maybe his wife?
Well, if that's the case, then why didn't he have her move to Clonmel?
I don't know.
I think my theory is that he lost his job, that because of the economy, or maybe because he was a violent drunk, or he
Oh,
was
whoa, no,
psychotic,
we can't
or
just
he
go
was-
straight to the Irish stereotype of them being
No,
drunk and
no.
violent.
I mean, based on his behavior in this story, in context.
Yeah, but we don't have any, like, evidence of his behavior. Like, nobody says anything about it at the trial. I mean, we can't just make shit up.
But we can assume he wanted to move back with his wife, whom he loved so much that he later killed.
He maintained that he killed a changeling, not his wife.
He did not believe that, and he did not believe that.
Well, maybe, but everybody else around him did. And when times are hard, sometimes the power of suggestion can be very powerful. I mean, how have you been feeling for the past 4 years?
This isn't about me.
Isn't it?
Hmm.
I mean, come on, hon. All of your shows are about you.
Okay. Let's move on, shall we? On March 14th of that year, Bridget fell quite ill. Her coughing and her fever ran her through the mill. The doctor had brought medicine, but Michael shook his head and called upon another man to bring a cure instead. Enter the fairy doctor. Now, fairy doctor is a name for anyone who knows a lot about fairies, who can sense their presence or knows how to get rid of them, concoctions and stuff.
And they're amazing charlatans.
Okay, yep, sure, just do the puppet stuff. Okay. The fairy doctor came to them, bringing out his wares, tinctures made from God knows what, and told them to beware. Your house sits on a fairy ring, they'll come to take your bride. Feed her this and lock her in, she's safe if she's inside. Enter Father Ryan.
Another charlatan.
Okay, nope, this is not about you and your opinions. On March 15th of that year, Father Ryan came. Michael told him, say the mass in our poor Bridget's name. We know the father did this, the court records show. But if we knew what he knows now, he might have told them no. On March 18th, finally, a neighbor deigned to say that Bridget had gone missing, possibly for days. The rumors circled round the town, a search party was massed, and everyone came out that day to look for our poor lass. Now, everyone who was there was from the village. Some of them were people who had been in the cottage the night when Bridget was last seen. Anyway, one of them pointed at Michael, and Michael could not stand his conscience anymore and said,
She was burned last night.
when they asked him why he did it, he said,
She is too fine to be my wife.
They found our Bridget in a hole just underneath a tree. She wasn't buried very deep, 1 foot or maybe 3. Her face was still so beautiful, but even more bizarre. Her body was a tangled mess and burned as black as tar. 10 people were brought in for the murder of Bridget. Well, the trial that followed was a really strange one. Not only was the testimony a horror show, not only was a testimony a horror show of fairy lore, but they actually took the jury out to go see the house where she had burned and the hole where she was buried. And then the jury spent only 40 minutes in their deliberations before coming back. Michael pleaded guilty to killing his wife, although he maintains that he was not killing his wife. And a probable plea bargain brought his sentencing down to 20 years of prison labor and the charge of manslaughter. I will repeat that, the charge of manslaughter. So the 9 other people in the room, depending on their complicity in holding her down or digging her grave or doing nothing at all, they either got a few years in prison or a few months or nothing. They were all charged with wounding. So a man killed his wife and 9 people stood around and watched, and they were charged with manslaughter and wounding. But they all thought that they were killing a fairy changeling and not their Bridget, which the judge seemed to be okay with, although he seemed a little bit embarrassed because he's quoted in one of the newspapers as saying, "This case demonstrates a degree of darkness in the mind, not of one person, but of several, a moral darkness, even religious darkness, the disclosure of which had come with surprise on many persons." So most of the information we know about this case obviously came from the testimony, which was soaked up by the newspapers at the time.
Yeah, the newspapers, the tabloids in England made a mint off of this. I mean, they competed with each other to run the most sensationalized versions of each day's testimony every day of the trial. I mean, the articles were complete with all sorts of illustrations and graphic pictures, you know, because most of their readers didn't read so good. And the English ate this shit up, you know? There was nothing they loved more than reading about some backwoods Irish hick who murdered his wife because he still believed in fairies. And an English lord could always stand up in Parliament, hold up a newspaper clipping detailing Bridget's death, and say with a straight face that the Irish were superstitious barbarians in no way fit to govern themselves. I mean, this was a time in which Irish home rule was actually seriously being discussed.
No. What is all of this about newspapers right now?
It's just context. It's historical context.
No. This is you hijacking this
No,
show.
I am not hijacking anything. I'm just trying to make sure we're not doing some fairy tale.
I never said it was a fairy tale. This is a tragic story. I said, let's do this story about this woman who was wronged by her husband. And you come in here late. You come in late. And then you go off ad nauseum about newspapers and potatoes.
Okay, hon. This is just a show.
Oh my God, oh no. Okay, fine. Then you do it.
What?
Fine, fuck you. You do it.
What? Amber,
No. You
Where
wanna
are you-
do it, you do it.
Amber, you... Well, that made her mad. Just hang on a moment. Just wait there. God damn it. Amber,
Wait, no.
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
No, you left me all over
Finish
in
the
there.
show. You wanna
I
do it.
can't finish the show
Every
without
time I
you.
try to
Am I supposed to like play all the instruments and sing a song and do the puppets?
So you're gonna let me do the things that I wanna do.
When was I stopping you from doing anything?
I think that you just let me do the parts that I'm gonna do the parts that. Okay? Hey,
That's all I
great.
want.
Yep, that's all I want too. That's great. Compromise, that's what that's all about. Hi, sorry. That was super unprofessional, but you know what? We're in really weird times. It's a weird night. God, it's so weird not being able to see all of you. So we're going to move on. We have some more information because all of the information that we know about what happened in the cottage, the 2 nights that Bridget was undergoing basically torture. It's what we get from the newspapers, as we're talking about newspapers. So we're going to continue with the story of what happened those 2 nights. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So on that first night, witnesses walked by the cabin and they said that the doors and the windows were locked and they could hear Michael inside shouting.
Take it, you bitch, or we'll burn ya.
Then the doors were flung open and voices from inside were heard shouting,
Away she go! Away she go!
That first night was a hellish one as Bridget lay in bed. The neighbors gathered round and watched as Michael said, away with you, you fairy rich, you bring my Bridget here. Or if you're her, you'll have to prove you've got nothing to fear. He took the fire poker and held it to her face to make her take the medicine the fairy doctor made. The neighbors helped him force it down, but when she wouldn't tire, they soaked our Bridget down with piss and brought her to the fire. Now, if you didn't get part of that, they soaked our Bridget down with piss. Not exaggerating there. They actually went around and collected urine in a pot and heated it up on the fire and then splashed it on her. Some accounts say that they also made her drink it because that's part of getting rid of a fairy. Use something profane like urine or something holy like blessed foods or holy water or saying the name of God. You can also use iron, which is why Michael had the iron fire poker in her face and may have marked or bruised her with it, trying to get her to open her mouth so that they could force urine down her throat. So if all of this fails to get rid of your fairy, there is usually one other way that you can do it because fairies, like humans, are susceptible to fire. Michael said, now mind me, or in the flames you go. You tell me that you're Bridget, you tell me who you know. He said the rosary over her and took God's name in vain and made her prove she was herself. Again, again, again.
Are you Bridget Boland, wife of Michael Cleary, in the name of God?
I am Bridget Boland, wife of Michael Cleary, in the name of God. He made her do this 3 times, and our poor Bridget, who is sick with pneumonia and drenched with urine, is able to say that she is herself in the name of God 3 times. Then he makes her go around the room and identify everybody, which she is able to do, thus saving her life.
For now.
Oh my God, did you not learn anything from what just happened?
Oh, I'm sorry. When we did that in rehearsal, you thought it was funny. You used to think that kind of thing was funny.
Okay. All right. Yes. Okay. But right now, while we're doing this, this woman is sick and people are crowding her and her own husband's putting her on the fire or like leaning her over this fire. I mean, 20 minutes ago, this story was all hearts and flowers and chickens, and it got really dark really fast.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you compress time like that, yeah, it seems real fast. But remember, they were married for like 8 years before this.
Yes, but something must have happened in their marriage to sour. The minute that she gets a respiratory infection, he's going to throw urine on her and hold her over a fire.
Yeah, but we can't know what that is. Like nobody in the trial testifies anything about the status of their relationship. I mean, in that culture, maybe they considered it to be none of their business or thought it might be rude to say.
Or because women were the properties of their husbands. Maybe it didn't matter how they felt about things. I really don't care what the courts say, what the testimony says. He did not believe that.
Okay, but if you want to speculate like this, then we need to talk about the fact that they were married for 8 years and didn't have any kids.
So, because she's not pumping out babies, she's not.
No, it's just for that time, that place, that culture, it was really unusual.
Well, you and I have been together for 10 years. We don't have kids. You're not holding me over a fire.
Shit, has it been 10 years? No, I mean, look, sometimes in a relationship that's gone on for a while, like Michael and Bridget, sometimes people change and you don't expect how they're going to change, or you find out that they're not quite who you thought they were at the start of the relationship.
Yep. Sometimes, I get it. People just snap. Sure. Why don't you set up for the second night?
What are you going to do?
I am going to talk about changelings for a second.
Or longer.
So, changelings, we haven't addressed them yet. Changelings are a subsection of fairy lore. It involves swapping out one person for a fairy. Usually they tended to take our healthy, good human children, and in their place, they would leave their own fairy children who are weak or sickly or irritable or disobedient. Sometimes it just left old fairies that they didn't want to take care of anymore. Basically, anyone who is not their usual genial self might be in question. So there are different ways that you can get rid of changelings. We've already discussed like urine and holy water, but there were other ways like drowning them or starving them. But the most common way of getting rid of a changeling was to take the child in question and put them in the fire.
Did
Because-
your baby develop deformities? Well, maybe it's not your baby. Maybe it's a changeling. Oh, no need to feed it anymore. Is your child showing signs of what we now know to be autism? Well, maybe it's a changeling. Hold it underwater. The longer, the better. Is your son or daughter physically or mentally incapable of contributing to the family farm anymore, yet is always eating out of house and home? Changeling. Big iron sword to the belly ought to do the trick. Is your normally mild-mannered wife gravely ill and spending more time in her bed than she does in front of her sewing machine? Maybe it's time for a fire. That'll be 10 shillings.
Okay, yep. I mean, you've got a point, but I don't think the fairy doctor was a huckster or trying to fool anyone. Life was hard and fairies were a reason that things happened. I mean, he didn't prescribe the fire, he was trying to help.
Oh, you mean like this one was trying to help?
No, that's different.
How?
I mean, they're both just selling hope and magic instead of actually doing something to help.
But Father Ryan came to Bridget to say the mass over her and give her some comfort.
Yeah, and at the trial, he testified that if he had known that what he was there to do was basically start an exorcism, that he wouldn't have come. Not, mind you, that he would have done something to help her, but that he just wouldn't have come. I mean, is that Christian compassion?
No. But I mean, I don't know. I just think that it's okay to have a little bit of magic in your life, just a little bit, just to help you get through.
Yeah, I know, honey. I know you want that, but that kind of thinking is what contributed to the death of this woman. I mean, Michael's defense, his only defense, was that Bridget was so ill that she couldn't possibly be Bridget anymore. And then 9 people believed that enough to stand around and watch him do it. And who contributed to that belief, huh? And who turned his back when shit got real? Listen, honey, I know you want this to be like tragic and pretty in that sort of Victorian sort of way, but it's just not. It's this kind of thinking is what got these people into trouble. All right. This kind of thinking is what's gotten a lot of people throughout history into trouble, actually. It's how the assholes win.
I know. Oh, this is all getting a bit too real for me.
Yeah, well, it's going to get a lot more real before the night's over.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we still need to do the second night.
Yes. Okay. Yep. That's here. Second night. The second night they came to her, observing Bridget's state. Michael got her on her feet so she could entertain. The evening started peacefully as Bridget forced a smile. But
Fairy talk.
when they turned to fairy talk, and then another trial. Obviously, Bridget was not very happy with how the conversation was going. Your mother went with the fairies. That is why you think I went with them, said Bridget.
Did my mother tell you that?
Said Michael. She did, said Bridget. That is why you think I go with them and that she spent 2 nights with them, she did.
Your mom goes with fairies.
Okay, can we?
Hey, just watch out for the puppets, all right?
Fine. Okay, this isn't funny, and can we just do this?
Okay, I'm gonna do it. I
Okay.
just need you to calm down.
Michael wasn't sure of her and force-fed her some bread. He said she'd swallow each piece down, or else she'd end up dead. The first one in the name of God, the second for the Son. But when he gave her Holy Ghost, she choked and she was done. Now, the neighbors who had started all this fairy talk noticed that Michael was maybe going a little bit too far even for them. "Stop it, Michael," they said. "Can't you see that it's Bridget that it is?" But Michael would not stop. Her husband sprang upon her and stripped her to chemise. He poured lamp oil upon her and forced her to her knees. He held aloft a flaming stick he'd taken from the fire. In spite of all their neighbors' pleas, he set Bridget on fire. The cottage erupted in chaos as Bridget erupted in flames, and black smoke filled the cottage. The cousins and neighbors all tried to get out, but the door was locked from the inside. And in those days, the only way that you could lock or unlock a door, even from the inside, was with a key, and Michael had that in his pocket. He was not going to let anybody go until his Bridget was returned to him. At one point, one of the villagers passed out. They threw water on him, and they let Bridget burn. Michael said, "Now listen for the fairy going up the chimney. The changeling will go and will be obligated to bring my Bridget back to me." Bridget Cleary burned that night, and how the fire shone. The neighbors watched in horror until the flames were gone. Her body curled up on itself, all burning but her head, and Michael knew he'd done her wrong when she remained quite dead. They used a shovel to move Bridget into the fireplace and let her mangled, twisted, charred body sit under the chimney for another hour, waiting for the sound of the fairy changeling to go up the chimney and bring their Bridget back to them. That sound never came. They put Bridget in a hole, then they dug her up, then there was a trial. Father Ryan would not allow a Christian burial.
You see, no help at all.
Shut up. Father Ryan would not allow a Christian burial. So the villagers held a funeral over an empty grave in the churchyard, right next to the wall. On the other side of the wall was Bridget's casket. When the time came, they gently lifted Bridget's casket up and over the wall and gently lowered her into the hole so that she would not touch the topsoil and desecrate the holy ground.
That is so stupid and
Listen.
sad.
They're trying to give her a good burial and honor the wishes of the church.
Oh, well, maybe they could have helped her instead of burning her to death. You know, nobody here helped her.
Yes, but it is a beautiful sentiment nonetheless, and I don't know why you're not letting me tell it. I don't know why you are ruining this.
Because it's not beautiful. Okay, it's not mysterious, it's not magical. It's just ugly and tragic. And not just because this one person died, but because an entire village turned their backs on her, turned their backs on logic and reason, but didn't even use their goddamn brains. And then that story gave much more fodder for the English to subjugate the Irish even further, and you're doing the same goddamn thing. You know, this is just sensationalism. Sensationalism on top of sensationalism. Sensationalism on top of sensationalism. And I mean, you're just using a bunch of fairy lore bullshit to trivialize somebody's real death. And also, you can have another one of your fucking selfish meta narratives.
What?
You know, it's always about you. Oh.
Um, I, um, so the reason that I wanted to tell this story is because, there was this girl that I used to work with at a newspaper in my college town. She was a couple of years younger than me, and she had this, well, one of the first things I noticed about her is her wedding ring because it was this gray metal and it was spiky. I just remember thinking it was really harsh. And I asked her about it once, and she said that her husband had picked it out, not her. And I thought, oh, that's really sad. And then I would do other things like recommend books for her to read, or movies to go to, or restaurants they could go to. And she would say that maybe that her husband wouldn't like something like that. And I thought that that was really sad. This is something that I just heard from her a lot. And I had all of these like red flags, but I was too young to understand. I didn't understand, and I didn't know what to say because I was too young. And I think at one point I think all I said was, "Your husband sounds really strict." And there was this look on her face, like it was really quick. It just changed and changed back, like she had got caught telling a secret or a lie or something. And then she giggled too fast, and she said something about her husband was the love of her life and he was just eccentric or something, but I didn't know what to do. I just left it at that. Even though like I could feel that obviously wrong. And she never brought up her husband again. And I never asked again. And then a few months later, I left that job and I went to work overseas. And this was at the beginning of the internet age. It was like 20 years ago or so. And I got online thinking, I wonder if that newspaper has finally got online. And they had the front page story, though. It was her, because she had been killed by her husband. Because they'd had a fight, and they'd had a fight and it got ugly, and she ran outside and she hid behind one of those signs on university campuses, but he found her, and he bludgeoned her, and then he strangled her. And my heart broke because this is someone I knew, and I just know that this man was killing her, that this is the last thing she saw before she died, was the person that's supposed to love her most is killing her. And I'm thinking, oh my God, like, what is that? The stories that we tell each other, the trust that we put in each other. It breaks my heart.